This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now.
I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent.
When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm lucky to be joined by one of my good friends in the world of InsurTech, Chris Luiz of Scout InsurTech. Chris, how are you, sir?
Hey, Alex, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for inviting me back on. Always a pleasure to have a conversation. I only regret that we can't have a drink on a video call.
Yeah, I know. It's a really sunny day in London as well. So, we know English people famously. Well, the London insurance market is embarrassing. As soon as the sun is out, from midday, I'm convinced no one does any work anyway. But particularly when the sun is out, I walked through the insurance district to get into this morning. And I was like, guys, we're not doing our reputation any good here. It's just every pub is heaving. So I think we're in the wrong profession. I just need to invest in a pub in the insurance district with an outside seating area, and then the money will roll in, I think.
That would be amazing. We should have an insurance-based pub somewhere. Oh,
I know. The underwriter or whatever it is. There probably is such a thing. But anyway, I digress. But look, Chris, great to have you back on. I think it's going to be a fun conversation. But let's start. If anyone's unaware of Scout, who is Scout InsurTech? What do you guys do? And that'll help us frame the conversation.
Sure, you bet. So we're an organization that started really as a grassroots community networking group that grew into doing a lot of other things. So I run a light tech accelerator. I talk to a lot of companies every year. I help carriers and brokers understand the world of the technology market, how it's changing and developing. I have a conference in May. We throw something like 60 events a year. I've been in New York, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Cleveland, Indianapolis, a handful of other places in the last few months, throwing smaller and larger events, smaller 10, 15, larger, the one that we did in New York. We did about 150 people in there, which is great. And then the conference will be probably 500 to 600 people this year, very focused on early stage technology market and the people at large companies that make decisions about partnering with those companies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the event, and you were kind enough to invite me to go last year. It's a really good event, and because Columbus is it's a big place. Feels like there's no one there, which I found like bizarre because the places I go in the US are generally, the big cities. I spend a lot of time in New York. I'm in Vegas quite often. We might go to Miami for a conference. But it's really one of those cities that it's got the skyscrapers and it's got the big insurance players, but you walk around at night and you're like, does anyone live here? But what I love about that is there's a real sense of community while your event's ongoing because you can't kind of move for running into insurance folk or InsurTech folk. Is that part of the charm? Is that part of the plan? Because I think you've genuinely built a sense of community that other events probably don't have.
Yeah, it's definitely part of it. Columbus, Ohio more broadly, but Columbus in particular are really heavy insurance. Ohio's got 140 something P&C carriers that are headquartered, not just domiciled, but headquartered. Domiciled more like 275. Yeah. And then on the life side, there's probably 30 to 40 headquartered, and I'm not sure what is from a domiciled perspective. But we're very intentional, and we've been asked to move the conference somewhere else. But what we have is access to folks that are decision makers, maybe line of business leaders, and folks that don't typically go to Vegas or Miami or New York for the events. I know that I'm at all of those, you're at all of those, right? And they'll come out and talk to these companies we're bringing in. And we think that's really important and really valuable. I tell people a little bit tongue in cheek, but not entirely, that if you want to go on a boondoggle, there's plenty of conferences in Vegas. If you want to come and do business, we're the place to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does have a different feel. And I felt that even as a service provider and I was very used to this kind of speed dating style setup. And I was like, oh no, this is much more, look, there's plenty of opportunities to network and you create that, but much more organic. But people were doing deals and it was very obvious and very intentional. And yeah, I found it a really refreshing way to set up. And also you've got one of the coolest venues that I've ever been to in terms of kind of a place to go as well. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's the stadium, isn't it? It's the soccer stadium that they have there.
Yeah. So let me walk through that. It's a really good point. The organic interaction. That's something that we try and foster. Let me talk
Sure.
about how we have thought about it and walk you through it because it's been
Yeah,
really
please.
intentional how we put things together. And then the stadium used to be called the Lower.com Fieldhouse, and now it's called Scott's Miracle Grow Field, which I think is ridiculous. So I don't know if they're going to kick me out eventually because I keep saying this on like every time I'm interviewed.
Yeah.
And I joked about going in there, like rewriting it so it says Scout Miracle Grow
Yeah, I
Field.
was going to say that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, you got to cross that out for the weekend.
It's gonna be amazing. But the conference is 2 days. First day is workshops in the morning, and those are typically it's not the full crowd. It's a separate ticket unless you're a member, and our partners come in and try and deliver some content that's going to be relevant to a lot of to a lot of our broad membership. That evening, I think you were here, you were there last year. That
Yes.
evening, we have an opening reception. And our opening reception, last year we had 453 people in the door at Scout. Our opening reception had greater than 200 people there. Why is that? When so many of those folks are also, about half the people that showed up to the conference were native in Ohio. So some number of them drove in, some lived in the Columbus area. It's because the folks that pay attention to us and come to our events are really devoted to being in places where they can build like serendipitous relationships and make connections like that. So that's the first night. We'll do some other things that evening. There's some private events and things. Then main day of the show, we focused on the early stage companies. So last year we put 51 companies up on stage. I had room for 55, some couldn't make it in. And this year we're on track to put 90 up. I have 83 confirmed right now. So I've got a couple spots to fill in. But that's a big change. It's a big growth for us. In the morning, we'll slot those out into what we call showcases. So there's an MGA showcase, there's a climate showcase, there's a health, life, and benefits showcase, there's a claim showcase, there's some other things around there. In the morning is the opportunity for people that come in to en masse hear from founders themselves and CEOs of these companies, what they do, why it's important, why you should go talk to them for 1 minute each. Super fast. The reason being is all I want them to be able to do is stand up and present to hundreds of people at once and not have to stand behind a booth and pitch 100 times to people that are maybe not as good a fits. So there's a self-selection process. The afternoon is open networking, followed by a cocktail reception, followed by our dinner, and an opening or a closing party that we haven't announced yet, but we think that's going to be a lot of fun. So we package in that understanding of those companies around structured networking and then unstructured networking around that too. And you're trying to layer them all in so you have opportunities to meet people from all across the industry that are coming in.
Yeah, and I can speak from experience. I met some people there that like some venture investors that I didn't know that were, just sat next to me in certain situations. I met some kind of associations. I met some carriers, and there's a real kind of blend of people. But yeah, I think size. I've been. You and I have talked about this before, but I think size of event. I think we were at InsurTech New York at the same time, and that's a sort of smaller event, bit more deliberate, and I tend to find I get more out of these kind of focused events, and I think I'm starting to kind of lean towards slightly less is more. There's a real challenge there for event organisers, which I understand, is because there's still a commercial aspect, and if you go too small, then it almost can't pay for itself. So there's the right balance, and you need enough people in the room for it to be dangerous. But I think the curation of those, pitch events, etc., is super important because, like you say, you've got the right people in the room at the right time to lead to kind of a meaningful commercial outcome for everybody. Because that's, like you say, if you if you want to just have a fun time, just go to events in Vegas, sure, you'll have a good time. But if you want to actually get business done, events like yours are particularly important. Um, do you think that's come out of the kind of homegrown, meetup nature of how you started kind of, developing the Scout business?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it. And that we didn't lay out a commercial structure for the company before we started doing the things that our members and the people that sat around our tables asked for.
Hmm.
Which is why there's some things we don't have. Like we don't have an expo floor. We find an expo floor brings in junior level salespeople that want to scan badges, and it's not decision makers, and it leads to follow ups maybe, but it's not this that concentration of decision making people that we want. It doesn't contribute to that. And on the same side, on the other side, perhaps we don't do paid main stage thought leadership stuff. You can't pay me to get up on stage and talk about the thing that your PR group and your large company told you to talk about.
Yeah.
And so we don't get those very high level executives that mostly fulfill a corporate function now because they're not there to meet 20 or 30 people and take those meetings in an afternoon. And I tell them directly, I was like, if this isn't you, that's cool. Like send me whoever it is on your team that's responsible for doing these things. And we're just never going to overly commercialize it. So I know that there's ways that we can make more money. I think that that's short-sighted long term, and I'm trying to build something that's uniquely different in the market. And this is kind of the tack that we've taken.
Yeah. You mean I can't throw you some money to get on stage and just pitch FinPro at
Nope.
every one
Yeah.
of those startup events? Yeah. I mean, I can't even pitch it on my own podcast because if anyone's watching by video, we've stuck our logo directly behind my head, which is not the smartest thing we've ever done. So we probably have to change that. You're very embedded in the startup environment. It's always a challenge for us at FinPro. We're a recruitment business that specializes in startups and scale ups and kind of keeping abreast of who's who's a startup worth kind of looking at. How do you build that list of how do you find 90 companies that are kind of meaningfully interesting in our space?
Um, I make it outrageously valuable for them to talk to me, and I tell all of their friends to have them reach out to me. So I run an accelerator program that's free for them to participate in. I don't take
Yeah.
equity. I don't make them sign a document saying that I own some future part of their family. Like there's no strings to it. It's I help by creating content pieces with them, let people know in my network what they do, what they build, why people should be interested. We run virtual events all year. Some of them participate in those, and some end up on stage. What that means for me is I need to talk to some multiple of the number of companies that go up on stage every year to be able to filter through and pick ones that all those companies are selected by me and my two partners who are executive leadership at other insurtechs, as I was previously, because we think they're going to impact the industry in some way. And it's not to say like everyone I pick, everyone that goes on stage is going to have an outsized venture outcome. What I'm saying is that they may have a unique distribution model. They're building a product that I've never seen before. They're attacking a
Mm,
problem in a way I haven't seen. And we
mm,
love that stuff. It's really about turning over rocks and looking for people that are building things under the radar and bringing them to visibility within the market. And we do internally in the US or domestically, I guess is appropriate to say, mostly pre-seed to Series A. I talk to companies that are earlier, but we just tell them to come to things. They're not quite ready. We look for companies that have revenue or we have some pretty strong confidence. If you don't quite have revenue, but you have a 3-time exited founder that knows the industry and used to work at a bunch of companies we know, that it's a pretty good indication they're going to do something.
yeah.
Or US market entry plays. So I really like that too when a company's done well in Europe or Asia and they want to enter the U.S. market. Maybe in this case, they've raised a B round and they've said directly that this is for U.S. market expansion. Come put them on stage, give them some visibility to my slice of the U.S. market. Yeah, that's what we do. We love doing it.
We got any of my fellow Brits coming over to pitch? Do we know?
Yeah, we got a handful for sure. I can send you. I don't have the full list in front of me. I think of those 80 something companies, about 15 of them are U.S. market entry plays. Although some of them have one person, maybe like U.S. head or something in the States now.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge. It's a big part of what we do. I mean, we're quite often finding that first hire in the US, and it's something we've done successfully for a number of years. I think UK companies need all the help they can get because it's the fascinating thing if you've got all these relationships, let's say UK and Europe, and everyone goes, oh, we'll just translate those to the US, and it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. I mean, certainly can, and I'm not saying but be under no illusion. And I've had it the other way. I remember I used to do a lot of work in Europe, and I had these brilliant relationships in France, Spain, Italy, assuming that I could transport them into the UK or in the US market. And it's just, these companies are so large, these insurers are so big that they're their own entities, as we know. And when we talk about clients, and we do this internally, people lazily talk about a company or a carrier or a broker. And it's like, no, your client is, Dave Smith that sits in the London office.
100%. Yeah.
He doesn't have influence necessarily on the US. So again, it's why these kind of platforms are particularly important for businesses like theirs and events like yours. Thematically, obviously we've got all these, almost doubling the size of kind of startups that you've got. Are there any kind of new themes or kind of focus points that you've deliberately introduced this year that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I think there's two things that are a little bit different. The first is that earlier, maybe late last year, Scout announced a partnership with Insure, which is based on climate resiliency based company. So we're co-hosting this year with Insure a climate-based startup, which will be both technology vendors and MGAs that are in the climate space. So we're pretty excited about that. And then on the other thing that I've pushed pretty hard this year is to try and bring as many MGAs as possible to the show. So we had a handful, I think probably 20 between those on stage and those that just attended last year. I'm trying to more than double that. Reason being is that I want a really vibrant marketplace for the MGAs, capacity providers, fronting carriers, and the reinsurers to be in Ohio. We have quite a few MGAs, but we have fewer of those players. The financial market is based in New York, for the most part, or outside of the country, Bermuda, the Caymans, etc. So that's the other thing we're going to do. We are going to do a live, speaking of podcasts, a live episode of the Age of the MGA, which I think we've got some. I think they've locked in some pretty interesting guests. So we're going to do that at the stadium, I believe, with the field directly behind us. If you remember where that lounge area, I'm going to turn that lounge area this year into an MGA lounge. So that's going to be where all the MGA companies are and all of the technology vendors that are around that world. And then we're going to shoot the podcast out right on field level.
Nice. Well, I was part of an Age of the MGA recording at last year's Scout, but it's the only one that's never ever been released. Because
that's right, the lost episode. Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, my advice would be to shoot it before, particularly Doug gets his hand on the free booze, because it got a bit fast and loose. If I remember last time. Its lack of release is the only reason any of us still have careers, I think. But it was a lot of fun. It's a brilliant venue for shooting pods, and I might shamelessly see if I can do a couple. But I'm a little bit more run and gun, so I'll probably have my mics there and trying to get a few people on because I love doing those things live because there is a different energy. There's so much going on. That it's nice to bring those things into that, but particularly if you've got this MGA focus, I love all the guys that run that podcast, and it's a really good podcast for anyone that's out there listening. Who works in MGA, wants to start an MGA, is thinking about starting an MGA, or provides capacity or reinsurance for those plays, because it's real world examples of people building something a little bit different. What do you think about the MGA environment at the moment? Because if I track my time in InsurTech, and let's say it's the last 6 years, it was all InsurTech SaaS distribution plays. Then everyone was investing in tech or data-driven MGAs. Then it's kind of pivoted back towards a lot of SaaS because, if you put .ai as your web address, then you can probably get some investment for some software that you've built. And MGAs seem to have lost their, certainly venture luster. I think a lot of VC capital was unwisely put into MGAs, mainly because they're looking for returns that potentially don't match the MGA model. But what's the appetite as you see it out there, and are you still seeing true innovation in that MGA environment?
Sure. So before I get into that, let me just take this moment to announce something that's really important. Scout is
Cool.
now an AI native company. Our mission has not changed, but our valuation
Love that.
has, right?
Okay.
It's going to be amazing. But beyond that, I see a lot of innovation happening in the MGA world. You're absolutely right in that from a venture perspective, the money is not going to them. There's still some that can get funded in the E&S market. I think that's probably where most of it's going. But I'm seeing a ton of really interesting things around parametric products. There's a lot of parametric weather products out there right now. I talked to somebody that's building a suite of parametric products around not power outages. It's around business loss of use due to power inconsistencies, electrical inconsistencies, with a really interesting distribution model. And I think, embedded insurance is just like another buzzword right now, but people are really distributing these products in really interesting places that make them easier for people to buy. Will we get to a place where the VCs are going to be cutting big checks for them and believing that an MGA is going to have profitability like a SaaS vendor? I mean, I hope not, because that never should have happened in the first time, because it's completely it's irresponsible when you're making a percentage of premium, and there's ways to retain more, right? You can build a captive, you can build a reinsurance captive. There's things you can do, but it's just not the same as venture scale software. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of what I'm seeing. There's a ton of really interesting MGAs that we're going to have out, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to, I want to build I've always wanted to build a VC fund. I might call it like slow capital or something like that. Just say and invest purely in tech-driven MGAs and say, look, investors, you're not getting a 10-year return. Well, you might do, but it's not going to be 10x is what I'm saying. And I want to reduce management fees. I don't need as much money, but we're only going to invest in MGAs, and it's going to be a good return. It's just not going to be the return that you might see from venture, but we're just a bit better at predicting it. So that's been my thesis for a while, because I still love the business model, and I think it's a really good way of deploying capital for carriers, because they can try innovative distribution, they can try innovative products. But if you put that venture pressure on it, it sort of always tends to dilute the promise which started of the innovation piece, because then it becomes an also ran. And we've seen this in some of the cyber plays, that they end up kind of, oh, we've got this unique take on it, but now we're just going to have to write generalized cyber policies and compete with the main market because we can't grow broad enough. And I hope that we see investment in those businesses continue, but it may be in a more insurance native CVC type model, which we're probably already seeing. I don't know if that's an observation that you share, but I'm quite liking what a lot of the corporate venture businesses are doing.
There's some really interesting points of what you just made there. So I think it would be really interesting to put together a financial structure that probably mimics more traditional PE than VC, which a lot of PE firms are doing right now. There's a lot of PE firms that are I know Goldman, as an example, owns Doxa as an example of a company with a bunch of programs. There's Novacor, which is also owned by PE. So they're spinning out programs like crazy. This is something that's happening for sure. And that's one really easy way to get a program started right now. I mean, easy compared to the other ways, right? It's not, not ever simple. But I would be really interested in doing that, finding a way to maybe get a bunch of industry insiders to come up with an interesting financial structure by which we could assist these MGA builders and founders in building them. I love what I don't know if you know Andrew Bate from I think it was at Safely was his MGA. He did a great presentation on how he created reinsurance captive for Safely, and what once you understand your risk profile appropriately and you can do that, you're comfortable taking risk on yourself, how much more profitable that can be. And the other point I wanted to make is that everybody in insurance that sold insurance or been close to that knows exactly how to gain more market share. You just relax your underwriting. Which is a terrible idea. which is a
yeah,
terrible idea. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
like the part of the friction with the venture scale model, where like go quicker. Like I can, but only if I go worse. So do you
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how do you balance that? It's a weird dichotomy, I think.
Yeah, it's funny actually. A good friend of mine's an underwriter, writes a super niche book of business, really profitable. It's like kind of high risk. It's a high risk property, niche.
Yeah.
And he was going through the paces of talking to MGAs, and they're going, yeah, but we want you to write X by year three, and your model only says this. And it's like, I can write that year one.
That's
If you,
exactly
if
right.
you
Yeah.
want to just find me a new capacity provider for year two, because we're going to burn cash, right? And it's always this kind of push and pull with that, and go, oh, we want to see these numbers, and it's like that's not. Of course, the way the MGA model works is that you need a certain size portfolio. We understand that, but it doesn't make sense if you have to go and find new capacity every year, because you've burnt your book, and it's all a bit of a disaster. So yeah, well, here we go then, Chris. You and I, slow capital. It's going to start. It'll start. We'll
Start
definitely
it.
have a beer, and I think we had a beer and discussed exactly this sort of thing in New York. So we'll probably do it again in Columbus. In fact, it won't be the silliest decision I ever made. When I was in Columbus last year, is when I got my box at Charlton FC, and the renewals just come round. So yeah, that was a load of money burnt, because we took very few guests to it. What else are you excited about at the moment personally? You're very in touch with what's happening in insurtech land. So MGA's big focus. Technology wise, you know, what do you think of all this AI slop? Is there any good stuff within it? Or maybe we'll avoid AI if there's anything tech wise that you're particularly focused and interested on.
I could say it. I've probably said this directly to you at some point in a previous conversation. I am very excited. Being a former data scientist, like I was building AI stuff for years.
Yeah,
I'm very excited for the day that we just start calling all of this software again.
yeah, 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 yeah,
It's going to be
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And there's great applications and not so good applications. Some of the things that I'm most excited about, or I've seen like that have been really interesting. Um, One of them is the given compute and where AI is right now, the ability to really improve things like cat models. So atmospheric modeling, oceanic modeling, like this is stuff that was very challenging. And of course, like our cat models now, as they exist, are really not relevant because of the way things are changing. So we have better methodologies, more compute available, and there's lots of really interesting companies that are building around this now. That's
Mhm.
one of them. I'd say like a boring one. I've talked about this for a while, and maybe we've talked about this topic too. For a long time, particularly carriers have been taking rate, and that's changed, right? But if you're not taking rate, how do you continue to increase your top line or reduce your bottom line? I think that in the current market, there's going to be a big push, and I already see this. It's already happened to really control your expense ratio. And how do you
Yeah.
do that? You look at the boring administrative stuff in the back office and how do you automate it? There's lots of tooling now that does that. It's not stitched together great. There's some products and platforms that are doing it, but I'm super excited. Like I talked to some companies that outsource, they've got a TPA and they've got this and they've got that, and they really just have a corporate executive function internally, and then certainly some underwriting and some other things that are key to their business. Every one of those things that's outsourced, every bit of it that you could peel off with a better piece of software that's leveraging AI as it's possible to do that now, is a lot of money that you're going to be
Yeah.
saving. I think that's
Yeah.
a huge opportunity. And as like a little bit of a extension of that, I'm really excited about a leveling of the playing field that's going to happen amongst the carriers over the next, let's say, we take a long time to adopt everything. So maybe 15 years, 20 years, I don't know.
Mm.
But Alex, think about this. So we've got the big guys that are really tech forward. So I'm thinking like Liberty, I'm thinking Progressive from a personal, I mean, Liberty's in a lot of things. Progressive is in commercial too, but
Yeah.
a lot of money, huge engineering teams trying to do everything faster, right? They're building versus buying. They've had a huge advantage. Now think about a mid-sized mutual that has really strong relationships with their policyholders, and they have all the data from 100 years, but they've never really done anything with it. The ability to turn that data on and turn that into insight and maintain those customer relationships, it can really do a lot for those companies and help them compete with the big guys, because that you don't need the engineering talent or staff on hand to do the things that you used to be able to, or used to have to maintain to do those things. So I think that there's probably going to be a couple standouts so that they just decide to go, put the money into it, go AI first as fast as they can go, and maybe as fast as they can go isn't the right move, but as responsibly fast as they could go, and really compete with the big guys for market share, maybe, yeah, but definitely the customer experience and being what an insurance company was originally intended to do here and everywhere else, which is, support your community. I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, I fully agree on that. I had a really exciting conversation this morning with a good friend of mine who was actually looking to do his own thing, which I was really excited about for him. But we were talking about sort of AI, native and saying like the incumbents, even the really slick ones, even the sort of bigger, more established kind of tech-driven MGAs of the last 5 years are already in a legacy situation which is challenging to get out of. And so that was the kind of premise for starting something else. But he said, look, let's be honest, we've already probably reached, even though the conversation around AI has really been hot since Chat GPT launched, right? And it's like 2022 or whatever. He went saying like you're going AI native is going to become like going, oh, we've got a website. Like you say, yeah, obviously, because you're a company that exists in this world. So, we're already starting to see that be table stakes really at certain points of the program. So, yeah, I agree with you. Chris, we're at time. I knew we'd do this and we run out of stuff, but look, it's we're going to release this obviously before the event. So, like, if you're not got a ticket, go. Find Chris online, visit Scout InsurTech on the web. You should get yourself there. Columbus was great fun to go out as well, because it's the first place in the US I've been where people have been genuinely excited to meet an English person, which doesn't really happen when you're in New York or Vegas. So that was fun for me. But if nothing else, like I probably got more from this event than most events I go to, and because it is small and concentrated, and Chris and his team just have to do a really brilliant considered curated job and that's really appreciated by me and I'm sure people would find the same. So Chris, thank you for being a repeat victim of my podcast. And I hope we get a chance to see each other for a beer, well, as a minimum in Columbus very, very soon.
That sounds great. Thanks a lot for having me on, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thanks, my friend.